Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. My guest, Dr. Jeanette Yoffe, is from Southern California. She has a master's degree in clinical psychology specializing in children. She has specialties working with foster care, and will share a little bit of her story and what has driven her there. One of the things that I so admire about Jeanette, and I'm hoping she's going to share these stories with you today, and you know I'm going to ask, is how she started her business and what has developed over these years. So as opposed to me just talking about you and the amazing work you do, Jeanette, thanks for being here and taking some time out of a busy schedule to join me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Ivy. What a great podcast. I just wish I had this when I was starting my businesses, listening from all these amazing women. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate being here.
You're so welcome. So, I alluded to that you have a great story behind starting your businesses. You have started several businesses. You've grown and developed. So give us, let's go to the backstory first, and then we'll move it forward from there. Would you share a little bit of the backstory in starting out?
Yes, of course. So it was my own history that charted my whole development of who I am and what I'm doing today. And that is, I was a child who came from the New York State foster care system, and I was adopted at the age of 7.5. And having been adopted and growing up adopted and understanding my own history is what led me to begin to do a lot of self-exploration. And what I chose to do at first, because I didn't know who I was seeking my identity, and I became an actress. Because I didn't know who I was, it was easier for me to become other people. And in so doing that, I joined a theater company and began writing. And I had some writing talent growing up, working for the local newspaper and interviewing people. I was always a kid that wanted to learn and was eager and seeking out other people's stories so I could better understand my own. And in doing so, I wrote a play, wrote my first full-length one-woman play called What's Your Name? Who's Your Daddy? I performed it, produced it here in Los Angeles. I'm from New York. And in doing so, I learned that there were up to 40,000 children in the foster care system in Los Angeles at the time, which really struck a deep chord with me. And I realized I want to work with children. And I've always worked with children. I was always the babysitter growing up in the neighborhood. I was always very self-organized, responsible, showing up on time.
I want to interrupt you for a second, and I want to just review a stat, because so often when we think about 40,000 children in just Los Angeles, so Los Angeles is one of the many, many, many major cities in this country. So we could just kind of think about that the enormousness, for lack of a better word, the breadth of how many children.
Mm-hmm. And in Los Angeles County, and California is the largest child welfare state in the country. We have the largest population of children in foster care. So there's a need. There's a very deep and strong need to not only support these children, but support their families.
So you went from, so you grew up in the New York area, probably you and I neighbors at some point unexpectedly, because big cities are very small places. Jump forward, you migrate to Los Angeles, you develop this one-woman show, you're an actress, and then what happens? What happens next?
I did receive a bachelor's in arts from Pace University in Manhattan, and I was all about the theater, learning everything. So coming to Los Angeles, I wanted to be a part of the arts community, of course. So coming here, when you have a bachelor's degree, there's a lot you can bounce off of. There's a lot you can pursue. So I learned that if I want to work with children, I can actually go and receive a master's degree in clinical psychology because of the foundation I had already developed for myself. And my parents were very adamant with me, and I'm glad they were, because they told me you want something to fall back on. Had I not received a bachelor's degree in arts, I don't think I could have made this next step in my career.
I'm going to jump in here because it's amazing similarities. When I went to my parents when I was younger as a dancer, and I said, I want to go to college for dance. And they said, you must receive an education, a degree with something that you can earn a living with. And, and again, I ended up with a degree in dance and a degree in communications, so I could actually earn a living.
Exactly. And that's what I think. And to be an effective artist, to be an advocate, and to really, art is about imitating life, and it also is about what in life do you want to reframe, help create a new meaning and understanding about. So for me, it became this whole new advocacy. Wow, I can take my life now and I can work with children in an effective way through psychology, through education, and working with families. And I can also help what's called have a corrective emotional experience, because I know growing up, I needed somebody like me to be able to look at me and say, I understand your experience. I may not have exactly the same story, but I understand, because there's seven core themes in foster care and adoption. So being able to work with kids, and kids look up to me and they see that I'm someone that came from the foster care system and now I'm a role model. It means so much to me to be able to do this work, that it's created so much more opportunity to be the change that I want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it has its challenges because we're dealing with behavior. You can't contract behavior, but you can contract what you do. I have a lot of executive control and creativity, and so beyond. So when I received my master's in clinical psychology, I then um, surprisingly, I became pregnant during my licensing exam. And because I had, well, let me backtrack just a little bit. The life of the adoptee is lifelong, it's a lifelong process. So in 2002, I had found my birth mother, and she was living in Argentina at the time. And this also spawned me in understanding psychology and why things happen to us, what drives behavior, what drives mental health challenges, because I learned that my mother was schizophrenic and she'd been living in a government-run women's institution in Argentina. And so for me, understanding psychology and how the mind works became a cathartic and almost thesis for me, and understanding my mother's trajectory and what led her into a women's institution, and what led me into being a ward of the state and going into foster care and then becoming adopted. So after finding my birth mother, I became pregnant. And so I did stay home for 6 months. But in that time, I had become licensed, and I decided, you know what? I know I'm a new mother. I know I can't work full time, because I was a very devoted mother. And because for me, I really wanted to form a very strong attachment with my child. It was the first time I had my own biology. It was very important for me. And so I started slowly with a small private practice, and I began to see 3 to 4 families on a Saturday. I started very small, part-time
Okay,
practice.
so you the way life developed for you
Yes.
is that you became licensed, you connected with your birth mother. Of course, from that, you're gifted with a daughter, if I recall,
A
right?
son.
A
I have
son, a son.
Yeah.
You know, with your son, and It's like, okay, well, what will work look like? And you say, well, what I can do, which is 100% under the principles that I teach her. How do we show up with an what I can do attitude? And for you, Jeanette, it was what I can do. It's like, wow, I could probably see some families on Saturday.
Correct. And I started small. Now, what led up to this was I had done a lot of speaking events at local agencies.
Yeah, so
And
tell me more about that, because,
Mhm.
I will always say speaking is one of your greatest forms of marketing.
I agree. I agree. And I did a lot of speaking events. I did not get paid. I would just call the local agency. I knew that this was my niche. My niche was I'm working with children and families connected by foster care and adoption. So that's my focus, with a horse with blinders on. This is what I'm doing. Who do I need to contact so they know who I am and what I'm doing? So I just called local agencies and said, I'm available to speak. I can speak on, I was very specific, this topic, parenting your adopted child, parenting your foster child. I had three. I always like the number three. Not anything more than that gets too complex for me. These are three trainings I can do. And of course, they called me. I went in, spoke to the families. I had then learned marketing at an early time, because at that point someone had told me you want to get everyone's email address. So I had
Whatever bird dropped that piece of information on your shoulder.
so at the end of every training, if you want to be on my email list, please sign up. And at that point everything was by paper, and I'd have to go home and put it in my
And you typed it in. I remember those days.
in my MailChimp. I don't think MailChimp existed. This was 2002. So doing the trainings, then when I became licensed and started part-time, seeing 3 to 4 clients, I then sent out an email. I created a website, very basic website, who I am, what I do, what my services are, and I was slammed. I was shocked. I had a waiting list within a month. I had a lot of calls. Oh, I would love to come see you. I'd like to bring my family, because this was a niche that was not um, there wasn't this service, someone who was a paraprofessional, came from the experience, is now a licensed therapist. She knows the inside and out of the adoptee life. And so this niche for me really helped me build my practice. And within a year, I was seeing up to 20 clients a week. I had also started in this time period. I also felt, because I'm a therapist, I'm working with the family for 1 hour a week, sometimes 2 hours a week, doing family therapy, one-on-one with the child. I said, parents need to know that there's other parents like them, because parents would ask me so many questions. And I said, I have an email list. I'm starting to build a community. I would like to start a parent support group for free once a month on the first Wednesday of every month. Well, I started
And
this.
I'm going to interrupt you here for
Mhm.
a sec. I'm going to jump in
I
and
saw a
say,
need, a demand, a need, and I met the need.
right? Business 101, be aware, right? Where are the holes in the marketplace? What are your clients asking for? Don't fill things based on, I want to build this, but what are the clients asking for? And then how do we then service these clients? How do we become that asset? And
Exactly.
that's so, you talk, we very often we talk about in business organic growth. And is it organic, or is it actually listening growth?
I like that. Yeah, I think it's both. I
Right.
think you have to be a very good listener. And yeah, it's not about your agenda. It's about, what are you hearing your client's agenda? What are their unmet needs? And so in starting the support group, 60 people showed up to the first support group. It was in person. I called
Where'd
the
you put everybody?
we just
Did they RSVP?
I was shocked. I was shocked. I mean, I realized that, wow,
It was
there
in that moment
is
that
a
that
need.
is creation.
Yes. And so again, I had called a local agency and I said, do you have a conference room available? I would like to provide a free support group, 2 hours a month, the first Wednesday of the month. They were so pleased that I was providing this service. It makes them look good. It makes us, it's a
Right?
win-win
It's
situation.
win-win.
Exactly. And out of that is how I met more families, we had more clients because of course they're seeing me speak. I'm holding this 2 hour support group. They want to meet with me one-on-one now. And I was so busy. So at that point, I then created a corporation, Yoffe Therapy,
First of
incorporated.
all, let's give you a little applause on understanding the importance of then taking a business that goes from concept to growing to creating the true business foundation, right?
Yes.
So all of a sudden you got to pour that concrete. You have to build real steel walls, and that's creating that corporation.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And I had to step back and go, okay, this is a business. I need to hire an accountant. I
I
need
need
an
an
attorney.
attorney.
And you have to just, these are hard pills to swallow, and you
Right.
go, okay, I'm going to do this. And I've always been very determined. I'm very, when I say I'm going to do something, I commit and I follow through. And I think that's really important
And
because
I actually want to jump in here again, because that's also part of the artist in you.
mm,
You know, back a while ago, of course, every day seems a little bit like Groundhog Day now that we're in 2021 and we're all close to about a year with a pandemic, or about a year with a pandemic. But a while back, if anybody's interested, I did a series on business leaders who have a high performance background, whether that be arts or sports. And, you know, you bring that to mind right now because there was a consistent theme of showing up with, okay, it doesn't matter if we're talking soccer, if we're talking tennis, dance, theater, improv, comedy, about this dedication of like, okay, so well, now this looks like this. Okay, I'm going to show up this way.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so interesting because to run a business, you can't run away from it. You are your business. So
You better run into it and with it and lead the run and not try to catch it.
yeah, so you have to be comfortable in your own skin for sure. For
Or
sure.
comfortable being uncomfortable in your own skin.
Oh yeah, there you go. Comfortable being uncomfortable and knowing there's no perfect, and to be imperfectly imperfect. To accept that. And that's your vulnerability. I mean, I've truly learned now in the work, and now that everything's online and there's more of this podcast, just showing up is what's most important, because you may not think you'll have impact on a few people. That's good enough. What's good enough today? You don't have to be, on Good Morning America to have impact. If you're reaching, 5, 10 people and they're impacted by your development and your story, and they decide, you know what, I want to make a difference because I have this experience in my own life and I've always wanted to. So then the next step for me, once I started the private practice, was I then, because I became so busy, I then hired an intern and I was a supervisor, which you can do as a psychotherapist, licensed psychotherapist. If you've been in practice for 2 years, you can become a supervisor and take on an employee. You have to take them on as an employee and you can train them, which was fantastic. And I'm giving back because I cannot see more than 20 clients in a week. I needed to hire someone. So I then hired 2, and then I hired 3 employees. And 2 of them actually are licensed. They are hired as um, independent contractors. So I had to, then I had a payroll system that I
Working with your accountant,
working with my
establishing with the business principles, what is a 1099, what is a 1099 independent contractor versus a W-2 employee, what is the business looking like, etc. And my question is, when did business number 2 come in?
Okay, so then
I know I'm jumping.
that's okay. So then I had been doing that support group for about 3 years. And maybe 3, 4 years. So people would come to me and say, Jeanette, can you do this? Because they saw me doing all these other things. Can you do a mental health conference or workshop for my teenager? And again, I'm listening. Sure, I'll put that on my to-do list. Thank you for telling me. So I was always open to suggestions. I would never make promises, which is something I've learned. Thank you for telling me. I'll put that on my list. I'll consider that and see if I can make that happen. And so following that, I was then told by actually my husband. He said, you could start a nonprofit. He had started a nonprofit because he's a writer, and he started Arts Earth Partnership, and that was connecting arts with recycling sets, and helping protect our world, and the waste consumption, especially here in Los Angeles. They make a movie and everything goes in the trash. Well, how can we recycle those sets? So we're helping save the planet. So that was his nonprofit. So I said, wow, a nonprofit, how does that work? Well, you could receive donations, you can apply for grants, you're providing support for, yes, an at-risk community, which is who you are serving.
Right.
You're serving children in the child welfare system. So I said, I'm going to do it. I said, I'm going to do this. Why not? So then I created a nonprofit called Celia Center. And Celia Center is very special to me. And Celia is my birth mother's name.
Lovely.
And had I not been born,
This
this would
would
not have come to fruition.
correct.
So I wanted to put meaning and purpose, because before I started my nonprofit, I said, I'm going to talk to other nonprofit owners, and I want to know
And
how
that
to
is where
how to have a good nonprofit.
right? And this is when we talk about business, what I refer to as market research.
Yes.
What does this look like? How did you do this? What has worked for you? What were the challenges? Simple, easy, straightforward questions that I refer to when I ask people, have you done your market research? And so often they say, no, not yet. It's on my to-do list.
It's on your to-must list.
Right.
And people are open. I receive, now that I'm at the place where I'm at now, I receive emails all the time from different people starting their own organizations. Can I pick your brain for 30 minutes on Zoom? I'm happy to, if my schedule permits, because I know the work and the research that you need to do. And so I did the research, and I learned, have a small board. You want to have creative control. You want to be able to make decisions. You want to be able to apply for these types of grants if you're working with children and families. All of these things, how to solicit donors. So I learned all of these things talking with other business owners of nonprofits. And then I told them, I also have a for-profit business. And yeah, and so I then thought, well, they can complement each other. So Yoffe Therapy began renting office space to Celia Center. So they had the same address. And then I could apply as a tax write-off for Yoffe Therapy because we're providing office space for my nonprofit.
Beautiful.
And so they complement each other very, very well now. Now I'll have community events with Celia Center, and Yoffe Therapy will donate for whatever project we are now doing. So now I'm doing mental health conferences. We did our first virtual mental health conference in November. And I did research. What is the best virtual conference platform out there?
Right.
I went with the best. I said, I'm going to learn this. I put on my bootstraps, and I knew it was going to be a big learning curve, but I'm so grateful I did it. This is how I approach learning. It's not that I have to, it's I get to. I get, and it takes all this pressure off of me.
And, I'm a firm believer is when I stop learning, is the day I lay down and done.
Yes.
Done. Because
I agree.
if I cannot continue to learn, if I'm not interested, then
Mhm.
what's the point of waking up?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think the why is so important. Why are you doing what you're doing? And that's why I called Celia Center Celia Center. I'm doing this because Celia, Celia and me needed this community. And now we have over 3,000 people on our email list. We
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I have manually and had hired assistants to manually put in everyone's email list. And also, now we have our website, we have Yoffe Therapy, Celia Center.
So I
I,
want
I
to ask you this,
Mhm.
because you're clearly a woman that just steps into it.
Mhm.
And let's play reality a little bit.
Yes.
About a year ago, our lives were
Yes.
shifted on an axis we never saw coming.
Yes.
What we expected to be 30, 60, tops 90 days has been, wow, a
Mhm.
year plus.
Mhm.
With that, how did you have people working for you, you have clients, patients you're responsible for, a
Yes.
nonprofit, this, that. Now, how did you approach the transitions that were coming to you?
Yeah, this was hard because I'm in the people business. And
You're
I,
a people person in the people
I
business. Go figure.
So I was running 2 to 3 support groups. We were seeing 20 to 30 clients a month, and it stopped everything. Everything pretty much went to a halt. So I had a business office in Westwood. I was on a 2-year lease. Um, we couldn't use the office, and my lease was up in November. So I sat in my office. I basically sat in my office and I had a little cry with myself and said, okay, now what am I going to do? Because it was a big adjustment. I had to rethink, how am I doing this? Okay, let me think about the steps. And I like to think about things concretely. I need to turn now virtual. I need to go on a virtual platform to see clients and do telehealth. Okay, how does that work? Let me educate myself on that. And then I needed to decide, what am I doing with my office? Well, I am on a lease. I'm going to keep it until we see what happens next. And now I need to make time and space to train my staff to now transition. But I needed to first train myself before I trained them.
And
Yes.
what I hear you saying is, it was the theater woman in you. Okay, right? We write the play,
Yes.
we cast, we
Yes.
start rehearsals,
Yes.
then we bring in, we need a stage manager, we need a lighting designer, we need costumes, right? We need all, right? But we first have to write the play. We first have to have the piece of work. And the
Yes.
piece of work was for you saying, okay, how do I transition at this remote? That was writing the play. And then it was like, okay, now we have our cast of characters, right? They need to learn their roles, right? We have to teach them tech, right? And then we have to teach our patients, right? So that's the lighting and the stage, and it's building out the layers.
I love that. That is perfect. Yeah, that is the whole metaphor to this transition. I had to set the stage, but there was a lot of technicality because I had set a stage. My office was
Right.
just, I created romper room. It was so, kids loved coming to our office. I had, it was very child and family comfortable, friendly, and I knew that, how do I now adapt and create this environment, as you can see here? And how do I create an environment that's conducive for therapy and keeps children and families engaged and feel a sense of, a therapeutic office away from home, but in your home, coming
Right.
to
And
you.
and so you have to create a level of trust in the atmosphere because you're no longer taking them out of their atmosphere into your atmosphere.
Exactly. So it's been more technical in setting up the conditions for therapy, also helping parents understand your child's going to need to be in their room. We need a closed door. I need them to have all of these therapeutic modalities around them, whether it's Play-Doh, markers. They need their body sock, which helps them just they go in there and they let out some big feelings. I mean, all of these things. I make sad and anger bags with kids. So I have a lot of creative interventions that I've developed, which actually started when I was training to be a therapist. I also saw a need then, which was people would come to me. So foster and adoptive parents would say, Jeanette, my child's really angry. What are you going to do to help my child with their anger? And I'd sit back and go, okay, now I need to fix this problem. And so I thought, all right, let me think about this. Let me create coping skills that go into a bag. Yes, a bag, because that's in a container. It's a psychological container. And the child knows that in this bag is where they can turn to and pull out each coping skill and utilize them whenever they need to, because it's in their home now, because I can't be with them 24/7.
Right. So I have a question because I can't help myself
Yes.
but ask. And then have you created products?
So that is actually on my to-do list now, because I just learned you can create your own board game. And I met another therapist who creates her own products. And she has a course now. And I said, great, I'm going to take her course. I'm going to learn how to make a video game, a board game, therapeutic board game. So yes, that is on my to-do list because I did write a book of all my creative interventions. I'm in the Play Therapy Summit in February. Actually,
Right.
it's starting this week. I create mental health videos for children. So what happened during the
So
pandemic?
before I
Yeah.
know we have to jump in a few.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you before we do.
Yes.
Other women, other leaders coming up, when they have a thought and idea, when they're truly listening, what are some tips, advice, guidance you can give somebody today in taking in taking action?
Observe, watch, and listen from other women business owners that you relate to, that
Love that.
get you excited about whatever field it is you're in. Don't be afraid to even reach out to them and call them. I actually called a very prominent therapist and he picked up the phone and had a conversation with me. Don't be afraid to call and ask. And I think asking, can I talk to
Just
you?
ask.
Can I have 5 minutes of your time? Sending an email, a phone call, writing a letter. Don't and don't be afraid of what I call, it's not a rejection of you, it is a reflection of them. Okay.
Ooh, share a little bit more, and then I'm going to want you to share with our audience how could they continue to learn more, because there is so much we could be going on forever today.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful.
About that phrase, that
yes.
Don't take it personally when someone doesn't respond to you, because it's a very busy world. And now that we're virtual, I actually feel like I'm more busy today than ever.
I hear you.
I'm not driving anymore. But there's so many more platforms to put your information, and that's where I'm learning how to give the information out there. So don't take it personal. Keep reaching, and I use phrases for myself because they help me have meaning and purpose. And I love the phrase fall reaching. You're always reaching, and keep going, because each new day is a new day. one day I may be thinking one way, and the next, and it's difficult, and business can be difficult, and I have my challenging days, and I don't know how to do this, and now I have to learn this, and now I need to deal with this, and I go, okay, not you have to, you get to, and I take
We're
care of
choosing
myself.
to.
Choosing to. You'll start again tomorrow, and
Right.
I like to make lists. I'm a big list maker, and
I'm so with you there. When
make a
in doubt, make a list, write
don't
it
be afraid
down.
of paper, even though we're in a virtual world. Do not
There's
be
a
afraid of paper.
catharsis of writing down a list. So
You and I
speaking
will
of
write.
writing things down,
Yes.
listeners, don't worry, you could write this down. You could check in the show notes. Jeanette, Dr. Yoffe, how do our listeners learn more about you and all the great work you're doing out there with families?
So I have 3 websites. I'm on every social media platform. So yoffetherapy.com, JeanetteYoffe.com, celiacenter.org, which is my nonprofit, at Jeanette Yoffe on Instagram, at Jeanette Yoffe on Twitter, at Celia Center LA on Twitter, and on Facebook, Celia Center, and which portal? Pinterest I'm on, Jeanette Yoffe, and I think that's it. And
So
link.
when in doubt, listeners, it's Jeanette is inviting you to take an action. She shared so much about her insight, her journey, how she has said yes and stepped into things. And I encourage you to always see what's next for you and continuing to step into it. Do not try to live in a comfort zone. Be bold, be smart, and step into the uncomfortableness of growth. And know that we're all here to support your journey forward. Dr. Jeanette Yoffe, thank you so much for joining me today on Her Success Story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And listeners, last action, hit subscribe on the link below. We have great episodes coming into your inbox or your podcast links every Monday morning, as well as leave a note behind on what impacted you the most about Jeanette's story and today's interview, and most importantly, what you're going to do about it, your takeaway and your action. Thanks for joining us here. See you next time.